I'm Jace Lacob, and you're listening to Masterpiece Studio. Snow falls in rural France, blanketing a mountain hotel, where Victorian London's finest and only female detective Eliza Scarlet is hot on the trail of a notorious con artist.
The room is booked under the name Slade, but you are in fact Charles Percival, a rather notorious conman. Or do you prefer con artist?
What are you talking about? You're insane.
You've defrauded half of London, including my client, Lord Morgan, who's offered an amount of money I can only describe as vulgar to bring you back to England.
At least that's who Eliza thinks she's captured.
Eliza Scarlet. Charles Percival. Charles Percival. Eliza Scarlet.
As I've said several times already, I have no idea who this Charles Percival is. My name is Baron, Sebastian Baron of the Hampshire Barons.
Now, why wouldn't I believe the word of a conman?
In this ritzy hotel, populated with potential criminals and detectives for hire, it can be hard to tell the two apart.
Why leave a series of clues to bring me to the same hotel he's staying in? Why not send me off to some far-flung part of the world miles from where he actually is?
That's an interesting point.
I believe there are three possible answers. One of us is right. Both of us are right. Or neither of us are right. And Charles Percival is somewhere else entirely.
Miss Scarlet and the Duke creator and head writer Rachael took on a new role for this Jewel Box of a Bottle episode, director, for the very first time. She returns to the podcast to explain why her first time in the director's chair won't be her last. This week, we are joined by Miss Scarlet and the Duke, creator, executive producer, writer, and now director, Rachael New. Welcome.
Hello, Jace. How are you?
I'm quite well. How are you?
Good. I'm excellent, thank you. Yes.
It's good to hear. Episode 3 marks your directorial debut, not just on Miss Scarlet and the Duke, but directing full stop. You weren't originally intending to direct this season, so how did this turn of events come about?
Well, that's exactly right. So what was meant to happen was my writing partner, Ben Edwards, was due to direct this particular episode. And we had been filming probably for about 6 months. We'd been in Belgrade for about 6 months. We'd finished most of the episodes. We broke for Christmas. And then we were getting back in January to do 2 more episodes, one of which was the episode that Ben was meant to direct. And that's when we got hit by COVID massively. Up until that point, we had sort of done a lot of firefighting, managed to not miss a day's production. But then in January, we had various kind of casualties of COVID. Some actors couldn't come out, and crew were kind of getting hit by it. And one of the people that got it was Ben. So that night, I think it was like almost midnight, we got the confirmation of his test. And so, yeah, it was just like, well, I think there was no one else to do it. So I had to do it. But in some ways, I was very prepared. I'd been on set with the actors for months and months previous to that. So I was sort of, very comfortable, very at home with our cast and being with whichever director I was working with at the time. It's very, very collaborative. And in some ways, I wasn't prepared because Ben had gone through and done his shot list, sort of handed me over this big, thick folder. And I was like, oh, okay. It was a bit like, I have these dreams where I'm sitting in an exam at school and I haven't done any revision. And I had this slight sinking feeling. So it was so late at night. I just thought, what's more important, me staying up all night, going through the shot list, or getting some sleep and just seeing what tomorrow brings? And I chose sleep. So I put the folder down and I went to sleep and then stepped on the next day with a fantastic crew. And yeah, I think we did an all right job. So yeah, I was pleased. I embraced the opportunity and the challenge.
I mean, this was in some ways a trial by fire then. I mean, you're handed, as you say, just sort of a shot list and told, no one else can do this, go do this. How terrifying was this, or did it feel in some way like this is maybe the ideal opportunity to push yourself and direct, given that this is your creation, you know this world inside out that you've created?
Yeah, so a few sort of Patty, my one of the exec producers, my work wife, I call her. She had been on at me for a while, saying, you really should direct, because I was sort of, there on set with the directors throughout the previous blocks, of giving notes to the actors, and as I say, it was a very kind of collaborative kind of team atmosphere between myself and the director. So I kind of was thinking about it, but I had so many other things to do, because whilst we were filming block 2, I was doing post-production in Belgrade, connected to an editor in Ireland, all the way through. So it just wasn't feasible. But what happened was, when we came back in January, I didn't have that pressure of post-production. That was on hold until we wrapped. So it was weirdly the perfect timing. And it was also one of those things where I didn't really have to think about it too much. I was thrown in. Had I been able to kind of mull it over and marinate on it, maybe I would have thought, you know what, I like the role I've got. Do I really want to do something else, an extra thing? So I might have sort of said no, but I really didn't have a choice, and it was the best thing for me, because it just forced me to do it. So it was one of those things where it did intrigue me. I was thinking about it. Who knows? Even if I hadn't done it then, maybe this season that we're filming at the moment, maybe I would have said yes. But it really was such an opportunity, and I do think you've just got to go for it. You've got to seize the day, haven't you?
So Patty may have worn you down then, maybe.
Yeah.
Had Ben not gotten sick by now, maybe she would have pushed and pushed.
Exactly. Yeah. And Kate Phillips as well, a few times she had said to me, you really should direct, Rach. And I was like, so there were a few of the women around me sort of, encouraging me to consider it. So, but it came at the best time.
But having said that, most first-time directors have significant lead time in advance of stepping behind the camera, and you seem to have had sort of no time to prepare whatsoever. You're sort of given Ben's shot list. I mean, did you take 10 minutes to sort of storyboard any shots, or look through the shot list, or think about things in any way before yelling action?
Well, the answer is no, but the good thing is I knew the locations really well. And this particular episode that I directed is what we would call like a bubble or a bottle episode. It wasn't in our usual set. It was based in a hotel in France. And so we had 2 locations. We had one particular location which we've used a few times, that we used for the reception area and the stairs of the hotel and the corridors. And then all the bedrooms were back on set, which our amazing set designer and set deck team had created. So I knew the teams really well. I knew the locations really well, because I'd filmed there a lot. I had an absolutely brilliant DP in Milos Kodemo, a brilliant first AD in Marco Mudrick. So I had and the rest of the crew as well. So I had a very, very solid team around me. And I would say, once we stepped on it, also I had obviously the wonderful Kate Phillips, Felix Scott. So I had a stellar cast. So when we kind of stepped on, it was a case of just taking a moment and chatting with them about what shots we could do. And so it did feel very natural. The other thing is Ben and I, we are married. So over Christmas, previous to that, we talked a lot about, it wasn't necessarily that I went through a short list, but we did talk an awful lot about, the episode. And so it wasn't too terrifying. And as I said, I'd had so much experience with the other directors being on set that I tried to soak up that as much as possible as well. So yeah, I think I had the right amount of adrenaline, but it was very much a mindset of, well, you've just, don't get in your own way, just get on with it. And so I did. And what was really nice was I had lots of lovely messages from all of our previous directors, basically going, "Come on, you can do this." You know, it was really like everybody kind of came together and was cheering me on, which was very touching. So yeah, I love that bit.
I mean, from the outside, it's amazing to me because all of this seemed to me to be intentional. As you say, that it is this sort of bottle episode that's set outside the usual world of Miss Scarlet. Eliza and Nash are the only regular cast members to appear in it. If there was ever a time to have a perfect episode for a first-time director to come in, it would be something like this. But what you're saying is it's entirely serendipitous, which I think is amazing. Because it feels planned from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I mean, it is astonishing, isn't it? It's like it ticks every single box. You know, I had the cast, like Felix was in it with Kate. I had the locations that I had already sort of knew really well. We were in sort of more or less 2 locations, so we didn't have to worry about set moves and stuff like that. So lots of the stresses and strain that you would normally get on, during a shoot, some of that wasn't there. However, I would say we were doing a lot of pages a day. Let's put it that way. It was a packed schedule, and we were slightly being battered by COVID. So at one point, we lost a lot of crew. So it wasn't quite plain sailing. There was some really there were some moments where I did think, oh my God, but we got through it. Yeah, we got through it. And poor old Ben was kind of videoing in. He was able to watch. We've got like remote viewing, so he was able to watch that whilst he was in isolation, and he would be texting me going, "Oh, that was a great shot," or because he could see me directing. So it was this really crazy time, but it just brought the team together so much. It was real blitz spirit. It really was. It was incredible. It was a really amazing time.
There is a feeling of wintry coziness initially, the charming Hotel Saint-Marc in the snowy French countryside, which could be the setup for a Poirot or something similar. Then the storm sets in. Eliza and Nash can't leave the hotel. Did that sense of isolation here help to create that rising sense of tension that the atmosphere required?
Absolutely. And it's a really good, that's such a great point. And that's all down to Ben, because he wrote the episode. It's a brilliantly written episode, and that was absolutely his intention, to make it very isolated. They can't leave. They're kind of stuck all night long in this hotel in the middle of nowhere. There's these kind of the con men. There's a murder. So you're right. It's this like lovely classic kind of mystery. I have to give Ben his credit. He did direct for an afternoon. And that was the snowy exteriors. And then he found out he had COVID, which was that night. And then we went inside. So I can't take any credit for the directing of the wintry exteriors. We also have a brilliant VFX team in Ireland, and they did some cracking. We were pretty much in the middle of Belgrade with the house we used for the hotel, and they created this icy, wintry landscape and doubled the size of the house to make it look like a hotel. And so, yeah, it was a huge team effort to get this episode looking as good as it does.
This episode features the return of Felix Scott's Patrick Nash, Liza's would-be rival, who's also on the hunt for Percival and who has also tracked him to the Hotel Saint-Marc. Nash provides both a sort of familiar presence in this unfamiliar setting, but is also the perfect foil for Eliza. How great are these two to direct as competitors?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it just doesn't really get any better than they are absolutely exceptional, both of them. They turn up on set, they know their lines inside out, they know their characters inside out. They've got so much chemistry. As people, they are just so receptive, so really engaging and really loving that sort of collaboration when I was with them, and just generally actually I've worked with them since a lot on this new season. I just feel incredibly lucky that I was able to step on, and they were my principals for that episode, because they're exceptional. They're very talented.
This episode offers the opportunity to humanize Nash significantly as he tells Eliza about his late brother, whose idea it was to set up the agency and who was stabbed to death trying to locate a girl.
There's this family from Cork, fresh off the boat. They paid my brother up front to find their missing daughter. A lot of men would have just taken their money and spent it, but not him. He went looking for her. He found her with some drunk lunatic down by the docks. A fisherman. Only with a knife. Stabbed my brother right through the heart. Dead before he even hit the floor. That's what you get for being honest.
So the moral of your story is lie and cheat and you'll stay alive.
There's no moral. You're saying that some people are survivors. Like you and I. That's why we should work together.
Does this story perhaps explain Nash's moral flexibility?
Absolutely. And I think it really peels back the layers to who he is, which we do explore even more in season 4. It just gives you a little insight into why he is how he is. And he's just a really fascinating character. I mean, he is a feminist. I mean, he really, he believes in kind of equal rights. This is a very, very progressive man. He doesn't judge you for your background, what your gender is, your race is. He just sees if you've got potential, then great, then you should have an opportunity like everybody else, because he's an Irishman. At the time, the Irish were not treated well at all, or were very disliked. So he knows what it is to face, prejudice. So he's just a really fascinating character. Yes, he is an opportunist, but he is a survivor. And he does see the potential in people, and he sees the potential in Eliza. And it's just ironic that the one who is the one to shout, her talents and, at the top of his voice, he's the one that she doesn't trust. So you've got this really fun dynamic. And sometimes you can see her slightly weakening, going, well, maybe I can trust him. Maybe I could work with him. Maybe he could be a colleague. And then he always does something to make her go, oh yeah, no, I can't do that. I can't trust him. So it's very fun. The bickering and bantering is very fun. It's very different to, say, Eliza and Duke. It's a really different relationship. It's got a completely different dynamic. So it was just really, really fun to write. Again, Ben did a brilliant job on that episode, and it was super fun to direct them. It was a real joy.
I mean, I love that scene between the two of them, which for me is sort of the heart of this episode. The two of them sort of trapped together in this basement room. Does the encounter permanently shift Eliza's perception of Nash? I mean, she says she'll never work with him ever. And then he says very sadly his name was Michael about his brother after he frees them from the handcuffs. Does Eliza change her perception of Nash because of this encounter?
I think it does, yes. I mean, she's never... I mean, we play it a little bit ambiguous, because even then you're thinking, is he telling the truth? But it absolutely does make her see him as more of a vulnerable human being like she is. And so what's really nice is the end, of the episode. They are becoming friends. They are, she is sort of opening up to him a little bit. And he is, I think he sees her on a slightly deeper level as well, where they connect there's a genuine friendship emerging between them, is all I'll say. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to give any plot spoilers away, but yes, that encounter and spending time with him, and they work so well together, that definitely starts to chip away at her and thinks, well, maybe I could give him, the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there is a decent person there within this kind of salesman-y, facade.
Before this next question, a brief word from our sponsors. Raymond James, a firm focused on transforming lives, businesses, and communities through tailored wealth management, banking, and capital markets solutions. Learn more at raymondjames.com. One of the guest stars of this episode is the great Robert Wilfort, whom many American viewers might remember as Jason from Gavin and Stacey, as Slade, who might also be Charles Percival. How was Robert to direct?
Just very, very, he's a very classy actor. I had seen Robert in Wolf Hall as well, which was one of my favourite shows in the last few years. He is a brilliant drama actor, but also has that kind of those comedic sensibilities. There was also Joseph May as well, who was cracking to direct, and Greg Hayes. So we had a very, very good guest cast. I think one of the best, actually. Ben, again, that was all down to Ben. He did all the casting. Well, sorry, with our casting director, but I was in the thick of it with the other episodes, and he was the one that meticulously went through and chose who he wanted for his cast. So I really can't take any credit for that. So again, stepping on as a first-time director when you've got that caliber of cast, it was serendipitous. It was just it was perfect for me.
Documents with your name on them were found at a house belonging to Charles Percival. How do you explain that?
My father was a ruthless businessman. He had many enemies. This could be an act of revenge on his only son.
Is that the best you can do?
No one was talking to you.
This cock and bull story may wash with her. It will not with him.
A woman who runs a detective agency is clearly no fool.
You see, he seeks to avoid the issue and instead gain favor. This is the man you seek. He oozes fraud. Just look at that waistcoat.
Well, you're just like an undertaker.
Eliza is shot from behind in front of the evidence board as the camera sort of pans and zooms to specific clues and clippings. And it manages to combine exposition and brisk movement at the same time. Was it tricky to obtain that sense of energy as exposition scenes traditionally can feel really static?
No, because we had done various kind of little jump cut montages before, so that was sort of in the style of the show. One thing that I really did want, though, was I wanted her to step into the frame, so we did see her from behind looking at that evidence wall. I really love that image of it's just everything about her, the costume. Our wardrobe, our head of wardrobe, always does beautiful details of her costumes from behind as well. And you've got the slight little, it's not quite a bustle, but it's just, the jacket. And so that with the hair, it's just very iconic. For me, it's a real Eliza shot. So I absolutely wanted that shot in there with her looking at the evidence wall. And where I can, actually, I really do favour that shot. We've just actually shot a beautiful scene set in Eliza's kitchen with her and Ivy. And we've got they're sort of cooking together, which I know is kind of strange because Eliza doesn't cook, but we've just got this really nice this moment, and we're behind both of them side by side. And it's so beautiful. I just love that image. I love it.
I mean, it is a show that plays with silhouette really well. And it does play with those sort of silhouettes, which, again, is a Victorian art form and makes sense in the context of this show. But I feel like that shot in particular does that quite beautifully. That's this sort of shot from behind. And we get her silhouette, and it is instantly, iconically Eliza Scarlet.
Yeah. Absolutely, because the first season we opened on Declan wanted that to be that sort of Indiana Jones moment where we see her walking up the street, we see her entering the alleyway, we don't see her face, and then we see her framed behind this sort of cloth that's hanging up. We just see her silhouette, and then she whips the cloth away and we reveal who she is. That was something that he was, that was his shot. It was like, that's what he wanted more than anything. And that sets the hairs running for us to try and to keep that, how Declan framed her, to try and keep that trickling through the seasons. So yeah, that we've sort of tried to do that right from the get-go when we started the show.
The other element of this sequence that I love are the shots of Eliza and the empty chairs in her office. She keeps changing positions, but the other chairs remain empty. And there's that sense of isolation again, of movement against oppressive silence. What were you looking to say with these shots in particular?
Yeah, that she is alone, and she is working around the clock. She's hungry. She's, hungry to be successful. And yeah, she has very little support. So absolutely, it's always her in her office. It's just her relying on her. We don't have any Moses in this episode. Her office is one of my favorite sets. It has so many memories of season 1 in it for me, and I just think if you look around at all the bits and pieces on the bookshelves and the desks, a lot of that is from what I would like to think of as from her father's old office as well. So it's full of, there's so much, it's so characterful, that office. It's almost like a character in itself, and of which she's very at home. So yeah, it was really fun to do that scene.
This was, as I said, a trial by fire for you. This was not something you planned in advance. Looking back, what is the one thing that you wish someone had told you ahead of this experience of directing?
There are so many things, and it's been really interesting for me actually, because now I am directing a few episodes in season 4, and that's been a very different experience because I have had time to prep, and I have had time to be a kind of to do it the normal way, whatever that is. That I think the one thing that I took away from doing this particular episode and then moving on to season 4 is you have to be the director that suits you. You cannot pretend to be anything else. So I've worked with lots of directors, all of whom are so different, and some of the things that they did I could relate to. Some of the things I would maybe do a bit different. Everybody would they would look at each other's work and think the same thing. So I made a decision very early on when I started this particular episode where I just thought, no, I have to just do what I think is the right way to do it in terms of how I gave my notes to the actors, how I was with the crew, my relationships with the team. And so I just did it my own way. I was lucky enough to really carry on with the same style I had done before I even directed. So it's not hugely different, but I think sometimes you can get a bit caught up with having the title of director to panic and go, well, I've got to be, like my favorite director, whether it's, I don't know, Spielberg, Cameron, whoever. It's like, no, you be yourself, because the actors need you to be as authentic and as genuine as possible. That's so important, to be really clear. So yeah, I just did what I just had my own style, and I hope that when I make a decision, I make it confidently, clearly, and quickly. That's one of the things with directing. You have so much pressure on you. So that was one thing that I did as a showrunner anyway, and I brought that to the floor. And I'm very collaborative. So when I'm with the actors, I carried on doing that. So yeah, I just stuck with my own style. And I would say to anyone out there, if you are thinking of directing, really have confidence and trust in your own way of doing things, because if you start trying to be something you're not, you're going to come unstuck very quickly, because it's a hugely pressured job.
I mean, in terms of prep for these new episodes that you are directing or have directed at this point, you had the opportunity of, or luxury, one might even say, of preparation. I mean, did you storyboard things in advance? What's your style in terms of directorial prep?
Well, it's really interesting because it's probably very different. I always think, I wonder if, when I come back, when I'm not on Scarlet, and if I direct some other show, maybe in the UK, it's like I've sort of been institutionalized in how we do things out there, and it's very. So I would absolutely prepare for what transitions I'm going into, what I'm coming out of. I know the locations inside out. I know the actors, but I like turning up and blocking and seeing what the actors want to do. Then obviously you have to sometimes change things up a little bit because you have to take into consideration your angles. Like we're on a backlot, and sometimes we don't want to see a modern building, so there are those times where you have to take those into considerations and ask your actors to maybe step a little to the left, right, whatever it is. You've also got the lighting. You have that has to come into play of where the lights can be and the natural light and stuff like that. So there is obviously an element of having to get them to sometimes maybe compromise a bit, but I like turning up and I like being with my DP and first with the actors and seeing what they give, and then from there we then make a decision about the shots. So no storyboarding. I have a very clear idea of generally what a scene will look like in the edit, particularly, as I said, the beginning and the end. Often I go into the scenes and that goes out of my head, because if the actors bring something even better, then I have to recalibrate. And the reason I can recalibrate quite quickly now is because I've had so much experience in the edit. It's a combination of going in as prepared as you can be, but be open to the fact that you're going to change things, because that's the point of actors. They come on and they give you something, and often it's that little piece of magic that you haven't quite thought you were going to get. There's often something slightly different that they give you. Sometimes the scene is played out and it's exactly how it's written, and that's the benefit of I'm lucky in the fact that I've written these scripts or most of them, so it's a case of I know the characters inside out, so I have that luxury as well of being able to have that knowledge, whereas maybe some directors are still kind of digesting the show, if you see what I mean. But yeah, I like to turn up and see what happens.
Well, I'm excited to see your new episodes in Series 4, but I thought you did an absolutely fantastic job on this episode, and I would never have known this was your first time directing. So very well done.
Thank you, Jace. That's a really, really, that means a lot. Thank you so much. That's very nice of you.
Rachael New, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jace. Really lovely to speak to you as usual. Thank you.
We stay in Victorian-era England for a conversation with a Miss Scarlet and the Duke fan favorite, Eliza's sharp-witted housekeeper and surrogate mother, Ivy Woods.
I don't have to be at Scotland Yard for another hour. Shall I make us a cup of tea?
I'm not thirsty. He's a good man. I just didn't want to see him today. That's all there is to it.
Ivy.
In my day, people used to mind their own business. They left people to deal with things in their own way.
And your way is the aggressive folding of bed linen.
When you fell over on your first day at school, you got a scab in your knee. And I said, leave it. Don't pick at it, and it'll heal in its own time. And what did you do? You picked off the scab, and it didn't heal for weeks. Some things are best left alone, Lizzie.
Irish actor Kathy Belton joins the podcast January 29th. Masterpiece Studio is hosted by me, Jace Lacob, produced by Nick Anderson, and edited by Robin Bissett. Alicia Baitup is our sound designer. The executive producer of Masterpiece is Suzanne Simpson.